All right, here we are. In this video, I want to tell you what the four attachment styles are and, more importantly, how to heal them. I think it's a very it's a topic that you've probably heard about, and yet I feel like a lot of people don't actually know what their attachment style is, also how it even establishes, and also the fact that it can change over time. And I noticed that with the people that I work with, the better they understand their attachment style, the more easy it gets to become healthier in relationships and to feel more secure. So today I'm going to walk you through all four of them. And for each of those, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can heal them. And I think it's very important to note that you don't just pop out of your mom whenever you get born and you have one of those attachment styles. How it works is that either your upbringing, creates the foundation for your attachment style, or later experiences, like for example, in romantic relationships or even in friendships, things can happen which will give you some tendencies for each of those attachment styles. So let's just dive straight into it. So, first one is a secure attachment style. Then you have the anxious, the avoidant, and the disorganized attachment style. Let's start with the first one. So, a secure attachment style is when your upbringing was very stable, it was very reliable, your caregivers were there whenever you needed it. And I think a big part of it is that whenever you were feeling sad or angry or happy, there was room for you to just express how you feel. And there was just enough space for you all the time. And you could feel that, okay, whatever I feel, I am safe. I can just express who I am. And that makes that you start to trust people more and more easily. Another thing is that your parents were likely to be very emotionally available. First thing I want to say though is that it's not that your parents were perfect. So everyone is gonna have either phases or experiences in their relationship with their parents that were not perfect. And before I even go deeper into that, I think it's so important to recognize that everyone makes mistakes. And as in this generation, I feel like it's very easy to start pointing fingers like, oh, my parents did this, my parents did that. Not to say that some things are just unacceptable. I completely agree. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of human element that people are just trying to figure it out for the first time. Anyways, whenever you have a secure attachment style, most of the time they were very predictable, reliable, and it could be that sometimes something happened, but as long as it's, not too often and most of the time you feel safe, then it's likely that you feel secure. How do you know if you feel secure? If you're in a relationship, and let's say a romantic relationship, it's easy to trust someone and it's easy for you to give people the benefit of the doubt. And let's say you have sent a message to your partner and he or she hasn't responded for an hour, you will probably think they're busy, they will get back to me whenever they can. Another thing for the secure attachment style is that you don't have a hard time being vulnerable. So, whenever there's something on your mind or if there's something on your heart, it's not too difficult for you to explain to the other person, your romantic partner, like, hey, something's going on, let's talk about it. Another thing is that you'll notice that you're quite good at setting boundaries. So, if something happens, it's easy for you to communicate, I don't like this, I need more space, or this is what I need. And you just don't get swayed very easily from side to side in terms of your emotions. One note here, for all the other attachment styles, it is very, very possible to move towards this secure attachment style. But we will get back into that on a later point in this video. But this is how you can recognize it. Then, number two, the anxious attachment style. So people with an anxious attachment style, they have one really big fear, and that is being abandoned. And the other fear that comes with it in a way is the fear of rejection. So if you often feel like you're just monitoring someone else's emotions because you want to make sure, okay, whatever happens, I want to make sure that they are doing okay. I want to make sure that they don't abandon me. What you might notice is that you're going to be very flexible with your boundaries and not in a good kind of way. So you might do things that you don't want to do, or you might let someone else cross your boundaries because you just don't want them to leave. And it can sometimes feel like you really want to just pull them towards you. And it feels like I need to be close. I want to be close to this person because otherwise they might leave. And even though that's not necessarily the case, people with an anxious attachment style very often either grew up in a situation where the caregivers were unpredictable. So they could be loving, but at the same time, they were unpredictable. Sometimes they got really upset, sometimes they got really angry, or whatever it is. It makes you feel like, okay, I need to really pay attention to what my caregiver is doing because I don't know if I'm going to receive that kind of love. I think something else that's really linked to the attachment style whenever you're anxious is that you really want control. So that means you want information, you want to know where people are, you want them to respond straight away, or otherwise you feel anxious. And trust me, it's not that you have any bad intentions, it's just that you genuinely feel scared and you genuinely start to overthink if they don't respond, or you start to overanalyze all the conversations that you've had and interactions that you just start doubting yourself. Did I say something wrong? That person looked at me a certain way. I'm sure I said something that just upset them. These are all things that people with the anxious attachment style do very easily. And it doesn't have to be that this starts to develop in your younger years, but it could also be that when you had a romantic partner that was unpredictable, or they were very chaotic, or whenever you were not close, bad things started to happen. That can also, yeah, help, or not, I wouldn't say help, but that can also be one of the contributors to establishing an anxious attachment style. So either way, you just feel like you need to pull towards someone and you want to be close because you're just afraid to lose that kind of love. Let me see what else I wrote down here. Mm, yeah, people pleasing. Something I also wrote down for the anxious attachment style is that you're very likely to people please. So that's kind of similar to being flexible with your boundaries, right? So you want to make sure that the other person likes you. But that also means that you start to just distance yourself from the person that you really are just because you are afraid. So that's, well, a description of the anxious attachment style. Of course, there's so much more to it, but I just want to give you a general idea of what it looks like. Okay, so avoidant. Avoidant attachment style has a couple of characteristics that are, well, quite consistent in the whole pattern. And that is, most of the time, avoidant people are afraid of closeness. They are afraid of that deep emotional intimacy, and they are very afraid to really show their vulnerability because they feel that if they will show their vulnerability, that someone will either misuse it or they will hurt them. It just doesn't feel safe. Also, people with the avoidant attachment style, they tend to pull away whenever someone else is coming close. And something that you see very, very often is this dynamic between the anxious attached person and the avoidant, because all of the time they are just triggering each other's wounds. So they can be, okay, you fall in love with someone and that person is anxious and you are more avoidant. And in the beginning, you might really like the game of pursuing this person. But the moment that the anxious person starts to lean towards you, it doesn't even have to be an anxious person, by the way, but anytime someone starts to lean towards you, you feel like you have to pull away. And something not a lot of people talk about, I think most people with the avoidant attachment style experience the ick. You know, when, I don't know if you've heard of the ick, but the ick is this concept of being in love with someone, and then all of a sudden you look at them and you think, oh my God, no, it's so unattractive. Or the way they speak, or the way they dress themselves, or all of a sudden the things that you used to like, or the things that you didn't see before, you get this ick. And sometimes it could be that, okay, this is not your person, but very often when you're avoidant, it's a mechanism to keep you away from love, because deep down you're so afraid of being vulnerable, of giving your heart, because when you were younger you learned that it is not safe to rely on other people, it is not safe to show my emotions. Very often caregivers in the younger years, they were emotionally unavailable. So there was no such thing like speaking about emotions. There was no safety around feeling. And I think also what you will see is that most of the time, these caregivers, they really encourage independence. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with being independent, but it can be that it was so extreme that you were very young and you had to do all these things that were just not right for your age. So let's say, for example, maybe if you were 6, you were already making your own sandwiches, or whenever you were 10 or 11, you were expected to have adult conversations, or all these things that sort of pull you out of this childlike role that you're supposed to be in. Mm. So something else that people do that are avoidant is that they suppress their own feelings, and of course they will also avoid their own feelings. And that makes sense, because if you're avoidant in a relationship, something that just exposes so much of who you are and what you still need to heal, it just makes so much sense that these people are very afraid. And whenever they are alone, it's also difficult to feel. Because if you don't feel safe with your own emotions when you're alone, you're not going to feel safe with your emotions whenever you are with someone else. So these are also some characteristics so that you can notice, okay, so the avoidant is afraid to rely on someone else. They want to be super independent. They don't want also anyone relying on them, because that feels very, yeah, just like you can't breathe. It feels like, okay, give me some space. I don't need to take care of you. I have enough with taking care of my own. Again, this doesn't have to happen only in your younger years. So again, what could happen is that in your romantic relationships, please don't mind the commercial. I still need to get YouTube Premium. I've had it for, I think I tried it for 2 weeks. It was the best time of my life. And now I'm thinking, why am I still not having the premium version? Anyhow, what you will notice again with the avoidant style is that they just don't want people to rely on them. It feels too intense and they have their hands full with their own stuff already. What could also happen? Let's say you're in a relationship and wait, let me see if I can actually turn this off. No, I can't. There you go, fixed. If you were with someone in a romantic relationship and you were very vulnerable with this person, let's say first you were secure, you're very vulnerable with this person, and they use it against you. So they might, I don't know, they might say something on a later stage that you told them in a way that was just very, yeah, very vulnerable. Then it can also happen that you become more avoidant because you feel like it's not safe. This could also happen with caregivers, by the way, or friends. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like this, but let's say you told your parents something that happened in school or in a relationship, and then weeks later you get into a fight, and this person tells you, "Ah, I totally get why that person told you. You are indeed fill in the blank. You are indeed really annoying." Or those are also things that can sort of create this avoidant behavior in you because you feel like it doesn't feel safe to speak about this stuff. So okay, that's avoidance. Um yeah. Number 4 is the disorganized attachment style. I think there's a misconception about this, and I do have to admit that I wasn't sure either in the beginning. Most people think that it's a combination of the avoidant and the anxious attachment style. And yes, in a way, that is true, but it's way more intense than that. It has a lot more layers, and it's not only that it's just a combination. So how you can recognize it is that people with the disorganized attachment style, they live in this, I would say, inner battle of wanting to be close, but also being so afraid of this closeness. And they feel very chaotic. They feel like um, they're emotionally very intense. At some point in a relationship, they can feel like, oh, you're everything I need. I want to be with you. I want to be close to you. And then let's say a few hours later, it's all of a sudden, no, I don't think this is going to work. I have so many doubts. So it's a very extreme push-pull dynamic that's going on. And very often this has to do with a lot of trauma. So mostly unresolved trauma. So if you recognize yourself in this, with all these styles, don't be hard on yourself because you weren't born with these styles and you can heal them. These are just patterns and signals that show you that there is something that you can heal so that you can grow, and that you can just do something about it. So with a disorganized attachment style, you are both afraid of intimacy and you are afraid of abandonment. And what's going to happen is that there are a lot of mixed signals. You might feel very uncertain yourself and very tired from during the day, just feeling like an absolute roller coaster. Um, Also, yeah, I wrote down it's very difficult to trust people. So when you feel with anyone, even though they haven't done anything wrong, you just have such a hard time trusting them. For some reason, you feel like you always have to be on your toes and really look at what someone is doing, what they are saying, and you just don't feel like you can just sit back and relax in love. Um, I think the more important part here is that this mostly happens, like I said, because of unresolved trauma, but very often it also has to do with the type of caregiver that you've had. So these caregivers could be your parents or someone else, and again, could also be in a later relationship. It could be that they were very chaotic, that they were very frightening, so that you were afraid of your caregiver, or that they were even aggressive. And why is that? Or why does that result in this attachment style? The thing is, with this attachment style, there was a time where the person that you loved was also the person that you feared. And that could be a parent, but that could also be a romantic partner later in life. And that makes it really tough because what you learn is that I want to love this person, but I know that I also have to fear this person. And that makes that you feel so dysregulated and that it's just so hard to trust someone and to open up. And yeah, so these are all characteristics that you can look out for. Um, Something else is that neglect could play a big role here as well. If you were neglected as either a child or in your relationship, that also gives this signal that okay, this person loves me, but they are not here when I need them, or they don't take care of me. Maybe you were left alone for hours when you were younger as a kid, and your parents just thought like, oh, they're going to be fine. And then another moment when they came home, they might have given you a hug and be kind, and then the next time they were just very unavailable. That just teaches you that that is just very unpredictable. So yeah, I think those are the most important parts. You will really also experience these intense emotional swings, but I understand that for a lot of people, you might recognize yourself in multiple styles. So I'm not saying that if you recognize yourself in the anxious and the avoidant style, that automatically you are disorganized. That's not how it works. Because in the end, the anxious and avoidant attachment style, they are two sides of a coin. That's a saying in Dutch, but I do think it's the same in English as well. So, in other words, the root of the problem is the same. The root of the fear is the same. They are both afraid in love. They are both afraid to get attached to someone, because the anxious one is afraid to lose them, and the avoided one is afraid to lose themselves. So it doesn't mean that if you have both that you are disorganized. However, disorganized people can have both of those characteristics from the other styles, but you will recognize it more by the intensity, the unresolved trauma that you can relate to. And you know what? In the end, that's something I really want to say. In the end, it doesn't really matter what label you put on this attachment style. That's not the most important part. And that brings us to the next part of this video, and that is about how we heal them. So, like I said, the most important part is that you become aware of your behavior, that you become aware of what has happened to you and the way you behave in a relationship so that you can heal it. So don't get all mixed up around, okay, but I don't know my attachment style. Most important part is that you start to recognize it. And if you are willing to work on it, then it will get better. So let's go to a couple of tips. I don't have tips for the secure attachment style, because obviously, if you feel secure, you probably know really well how to regulate yourself. You know how to be vulnerable. You know how to communicate. So I'm leaving those ones out for this time. So let's first go to the anxious style. Tip number one is become aware of what it means to be anxiously attached. That could mean that you're going to read some books, or I mean, you're listening to this video already, which is already massively helping you, because you will recognize, like, hey, that's a pattern that I have, and that's behavior that I recognize. But the more you become aware of your behavior, the easier it becomes to change it. So that's something. Just learn about it. Learn about the moments whenever you feel like you want to cling on to someone, and observe also, what person do you have in front of you? Like, what happens whenever someone is saying something to you or doing something and you start to feel anxious? What is happening? Are they saying something? Are they ignoring you or not saying something? Whatever it is, that's going to be the first step. And then from there, what you're actually doing is, because you're sort of putting a spotlight on your own behavior. So next time it's happening, it's going to become easier to slow down this reaction of losing your mind, and it will become easier to make a choice. That's not going to happen overnight. So it's not going to be that you see your behavior and you're going to think, okay, I'm going to choose B today instead of A. But the more you do it, the more you pay attention to it, it does get easier to make a decision that does feel good. And we're getting into what those decisions could be. Also, a lot of people with the anxious attachment style, they feel really guilty. If you're in a relationship with someone, I'm not saying everyone, by the way, but if you are in a relationship with someone that you really love and you can't help yourself, but every time when something happens, you start to become anxious, you might start to feel really guilty, like, oh, I'm such a bad partner, and why can't I just give them some space? And why do I need to know all this information? Stop doing that. Again, you were not born with this attachment style. So give yourself some time to work on this and realize that you weren't born with this and that you get to heal this part of you in your own time. Because if you're just going to punish yourself all the time for the things that you're doing wrong, it's not going to get any better. So be kind. Number 2 is try to do things that deepen the connection with yourself. Because there is something about this attachment style where you feel like you need the other person to feel the connection, to feel that love, to feel that safety. And the more you start to focus on yourself and on the things that you love to do and the things that make you happy, the less you have this urge to rely on someone else. And in the beginning, that's going to feel quite unfamiliar because you might be really used to reaching out to someone else to, I don't know, get some of your needs met. Examples of this could be trying a new sport, trying new hobbies, spending time with your friends. And if you don't have many close friends, try to make new friends. And that does sound superficial when you hear it just like this, but you're gonna learn that your feeling of connection doesn't depend on your romantic partner. And that's going to make you feel so empowered. It's going to make you feel so fulfilled because the more you do that, even if it's just a creative hobby or going for a walk whenever you feel anxious, or it's just going to feel like, I have myself, I can spend time with myself, I'm safe. And it's going to fulfill you so much more. And even, I'm going to get into detail a little bit later in this video about that, but it will have the opposite effect in a positive way. So if you are with an avoidant partner and you're starting to do, like you start doing things that are more focused on yourself and you spend time with yourself, and what you're doing is you're leaning back, you will see that the other person will tend to lean towards you. Again, that's just something I want to explain a bit more at the end of the video. So let's just go to tip number 3 for the anxious attachment style. You need to know that your worth comes from who you are, not from what you do. People with the anxious attachment style, they feel like their worth comes from whatever they do for someone else, whatever boundaries they are being flexible with. All these things, these masks that you're wearing just to please someone else, to make sure that they don't leave, it's all performance. It means that deep down, you don't believe that you are worth being loved. So you need to learn, and you can practice that by either therapy or affirmations or journaling about it. Your worth comes from who you are and not from your performance. And the more you start doing that, the more you start focusing on, my worth is because I am who I am. It's the energy that I bring. It's all those kind of things. The easier it's going to get to attract a partner or to be with a partner or create a healthier relationship where there is a healthy balance. So if you feel that way, it's quite sad to realize sometimes it can be confronting because a lot of us feel that way. A lot of us feel like we have to do stuff and earn our love, but it's so much more about who you are. So really focus on that. That has a lot to do with your self-worth, by the way. Something that's beneficial for everyone in this world. It doesn't matter what attachment style you have, is focus on your self-worth. Just be like just be absolutely obsessed with raising your self-worth. Doing everything you can, just repeating stuff, learning about yourself, reading about it, doing things that make you feel good. It's honestly, it's going to change your life. It's going to change your relationships. It's going to change your finances, everything. But okay, I can go deeper into that. But let's just stick to this for now. Tip number 4 is give it time. We feel we feel like whenever we discover something that we want to know immediately and we want to see the results immediately, but that is just not how it works. So whenever you've had this whenever you find out what your attachment style is, know that this is something that you've probably been carrying out for years. So every tiny, tiny, tiny step that you take, every time you delay your response, or for example, let's say someone is not responding to your text and you feel like, why are they not responding? I need to call them. Even if you can just wait for 10 seconds longer than usual, you're already improving the muscle. So give it time. It can take weeks, it can take years, it can take days. I don't know. It's at your own pace. So remember that. What I also heard one of my clients tell me is that when they started doing this, that they felt like they were putting up a show. They told me that, okay, but I feel like I'm not being myself if I'm gonna pretend like I don't care and pretend like I don't want to know, and then I'm gonna wait to call this person. And I said that's really, really normal that it's gonna feel like you are performing, but you're not performing. You're not playing a game here. It's more about you're changing your habits, your behavior, and that's gonna take time. So whenever you feel that way, know that that's very normal because you're adjusting to a new identity, a new way of being in a relationship. So yeah, don't feel bad about that. It's part of the game. Now it is a game. By the way, I noticed that the way I speak about life is very often in terms of a game, but that's just because I feel like it truly is. But it's a fun game, I feel like in this life we explore all these secret rules to life that make life so much more fun. And that's something that I'm learning in my business. That's what I'm learning in my relationships, in my finances, that there are all these hidden gems that you find. And I would say these hidden gems are often pieces of information. And oh my God, I'm so passionate about it. The fact that you can, even watching this video, there is all this information that we don't know that could just change our life. That's why I'm so obsessed about knowledge about our mind, about psychology, about what you can do to change your life. Because these things really help. That's the same with the attachment styles. Once you know, you're like, oh my goodness, I recognize myself so much in all of this. Last point for the anxious attachment style on how to heal them is, and that's not going to be pretty, if you are in a relationship and the other person is not willing to work with you, you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? What I mean with that is that if you're in a relationship and you are anxious and the other person is either secure or they are avoidant or disorganized, there always needs to be a willingness. It shouldn't be, I wouldn't say that relationships have to be easy all the time. Mm, for example, that's something that my parents always told me, like, oh, in the beginning, it should just be easy and it should just feel good. I don't agree. Definitely, I don't think it should be some sort of battlefield. Obviously, it shouldn't drain you so much and you don't get anything out of it. But I do think that if you're very conscious, and especially if both of you are very conscious, you're going to have these hard conversations in the beginning already of your relationship. And the only thing it's going to do is that most people have a really easy time in the beginning because they just don't talk about stuff. They either don't know what they feel or they don't have the tools to talk about things. So I'm not saying that it should all be easy. What I am saying, if the other person is not willing to work on it, know when to walk away. For my avoidant, attached people, don't walk away every single time you feel like you should be walking away. Why? Same with the anxious attachment style. You're going to repeat this pattern over and over and over again until you heal it. So if you are in a relationship right now and something doesn't feel right, and it might be the right person, but you feel like, no, this just doesn't feel good, so I should probably find someone else. What's going to happen is that you're going to find a new person that's going to trigger the same wounds, that's going to do in a different type of form. The same things are going to come up all the time. And trust me, I know. I've experienced it and I've seen it with my clients. I've also seen it with friends, with family. So you just need to know that there's no way that you can run from it unless you just want to have short-term relationships all the time. And I don't think you do. So know when to say goodbye and also know when to work through things and feel like both of you are on the same page. You both want it to work. And yeah, then you will find your way. Okay, the avoidant attachment style. How to heal it. First, very, very, very first point I would say that you should focus on is communication. Because avoidant people have a really hard time communicating their needs in a respectful, constructive, and kind way. And that's because whenever we, as an avoidant, feel like someone is getting too close and you feel that, I don't know, that feeling of, oh, I can't breathe, it's too much. What we tend to do is that we push away because we feel like we need space. And very often we think people will feel that I need space. But that's the number one mistake. People are more understanding than you think they are. And also, the right people will give you space or either will have the conversation with you. So it's very important to learn how to communicate what you need. So that could be, for example, okay, I love seeing you and I really enjoy your company, but for me, I prefer to see each other one time a week so that I can, I don't know, work on my business or spend time with my friends or whatever it is. But then you can still tell your partner or the person you love, I love you and I love spending time with you. And at the same time, I want my other, let's say, 5 days to do things for myself. A lot of avoidant people find it very difficult to communicate this because avoidant people, they're not harsh. They might come across as cold, but it's just because avoidant people very often are afraid of hurting someone else's feelings. So what they do, they avoid the difficult conversation. And that just doesn't work. So they're trying to sort of show the other person that they want space without telling them. And they're telling it them with distance. So if you can learn how to communicate well, how to tell your partner what you need, it's going to help so much because you both know exactly what's going on and you're creating some sort of safety for the other person as well as for yourself because you're being very clear. This is what I need. I'm going to let you know and we're going to work it out. Okay. Number two, connect to your emotions. Like I said, avoidant people have quite a hard time connecting to their own feelings and emotions. So it could be that you're very conscious and that you understand all of the concepts, but that you don't really feel comfortable with feeling, as in really taking the time to experience what do I feel? Am I sad? Do I feel frustrated? Do I feel bad? Do I feel tight or whatever it is? Most of the time, people with an avoidant attachment style, they did not have the example of someone else showing them that it's safe to be vulnerable, to share their emotions. So what they do is that they learned to just push it aside and to not worry about it and to hope that things will just, you know, go away. But that's unfortunately not really how it works. So it's very important to spend time feeling and taking time to name your emotions and to get familiar with whatever you're feeling. Also, something that I noticed is that very often the only thing we need to heal certain parts of ourselves is to just feel. We don't need to even know all the reasons why and all the details of certain past experiences. We just need to feel. We just need to give ourselves space. And if you're an avoidant, make time, even if it's once a day or once every couple of days, where you sit down or when you're brushing your teeth and you just ask yourself, how am I feeling? What am I feeling now? What do I need? What is my, I don't know, what's my desire to do, to, yeah, to say to someone, and really get familiar with whatever you're feeling. And in the end, your body is going to play a really big factor in this whole thing, because rationally, we know and we can come up with all these scripts about how we should be feeling because of our life situation or because of something that happened, but it's very different than really being in touch with your emotions and knowing what's going on. All right. Tip number three for avoidant people is to practice vulnerability. And that's it's similar to being able to name your emotions, but that's different because that's like a job that you can do by yourself. Vulnerability really starts whenever you're with other people. And yes, of course, it does start with you, as in, are you willing to be vulnerable and to be honest about what's going on, about what you need, about what scares you? And can you be vulnerable about the fact that whenever you feel that someone comes close to you, that you just want to run away and that you want to flee and that you rather just do everything alone and be independent because you're afraid to rely on someone else? So that's really important to start practicing that. And then you can take it a step further and start talking to other people. And that could even be, let's say you never tell someone how you feel. Even if you are, I don't know, let's say you're in a restaurant and there's someone else sitting close to you, you start to chat and you practice by asking them some sort of vulnerable question that could be how they are feeling today or what they are doing today. And for some people, this might sound like a horrible nightmare, but for other people, this could be a first step that they feel quite comfortable with. But that could also be with your friends and your family and your partner. That when you feel like you need someone or you feel like you want to share your emotions, and mind you, you probably won't feel like it in the beginning because you're not used to it. So you might have to give yourself a little push and ask yourself, okay, is there something that I could share with someone to practice that it's safe? Choose someone that feels safe, even if it's a coach or a therapist or a stranger. That could already really help if you don't have people in your surroundings that you're willing to be vulnerable with. Also, Change the belief that being vulnerable is weak. A lot of people that are avoidant and overly independent, they feel like it's something to be very proud of. And I get that, truly, trust me. Um, Being independent is great, and being independent has probably brought you here where you are right now. And it's not something that you have to say goodbye to, but I do think deep down we feel like it's something weak to ask for help, to call someone and say, hey, could you actually help me with this, or anything like that. So start working on your beliefs, and you can even journal about it and write something down, like, what do I believe about being vulnerable? Like, do I believe that it's dangerous? Do I believe that it's weak? Do I believe that I don't get to be vulnerable, or that someone will misuse it? If you start writing these things down, you will find out what you're believing about this topic. Okay, so the last one, the disorganized attachment style. I have some tips for that as well. Number one, start to observe whenever you want to lean towards someone and start to pull, and whenever you want to push away. Why am I saying this? Because if you become aware of your behavior, and again, with the same with the anxious attachment style, if you become aware of what your tendency is whenever something's happening, and also pay attention to what type of person is in front of you, what were they saying, what were they doing, and what is your reaction, that's going to be the biggest first step. Because most people, they don't actually know that they are doing it. And that's totally fine. But in the end, if you're not conscious of your behavior, it's going to be impossible to change it. So spend time observing. Start again also learning about this topic and about the disorganized attachment style. And every time something happens and you feel, for example, that you want to push away, just take a breath and take a look at it and see, hey, now I'm seeing it. This is an example of me trying to push away. And that's already going to help so much. Yeah, so definitely start with that. Number two is heal your wounds, and specifically heal your inner child wounds or your past relationship wounds. And a disorganized attachment style doesn't just happen. So something has happened before that has made you feel a certain way and has activated this attachment style and this pattern in your behavior. And very often it is linked to something that is just unresolved. So go to therapy, or watch videos like this, or read books about topics like this. Um, and then start to integrate it by going back to your past experiences and to feel whatever is still there. I feel like so many people skip their sadness, and with all of these things in the end, it's just really, really, really sad that all these things happened, and we have this tendency to just jump over it and think, okay, I'm going to talk about it. I might write a little bit about it in my journal, or maybe do a session with a therapist. But there's so much more to it. And if you're in this disorganized attachment style, I want you to make time to connect to all the feelings that you felt, the betrayal, the sadness, the anger, the frustration, maybe the guilt, the shame, whatever it is safe to feel those things. And it's going to help you so much. It's going to liberate you when you make space for them, because we are so afraid to go back to those emotions, because we're afraid that what if we get stuck in those emotions? Or what if I'm never going to be able to heal it and it's just going to get worse? Or we have all these thoughts coming up, but never, never are things staying inside of our bodies forever when we release them. So I would really highly recommend start to feel and start to create a safe space to connect to whatever you're feeling and what you've been going through. And if you need someone professional with that, I would definitely recommend it because it helps you to go a layer deeper because we really like to protect ourselves and to just go until a certain limit. You know, whenever you're thinking back about let's say very painful emotions or very painful experiences, some of us are very brave and they think, okay, I'm gonna write that down and I'm gonna go back to that point in my life. And then after let's say 10 minutes, we're like, okay, that's enough. Now I have to do the dishes, so I don't have time to dive deeper into that. So and when you're doing it with someone, you just it's not so easy to get out of it on your own terms. So yeah, it's funny because, because it's something that I've done in the past. I just remember it was years ago. I remember sitting down and writing about all these experiences that happened in my childhood, and I was really sad, and I was feeling all of those things, and I had put on some music, and I had made my favorite warm drink, and I was just crying. I was crying so much. And then at some point, I looked at my phone and I thought, okay, shit, I have to go. I have to go. So then I just got myself up and started to get ready. And then I just went out of the door. But yeah, I don't know. It's just funny that we are so resilient, if you know what I mean. Anyways, point number 3 is learn how to regulate yourself and learn how to comfort yourself. If you have this attachment style, most likely what you've missed when you were younger, or in a different relationship when you were more mature, is that there was no comfort given to you in the way that you needed it. So that means that you don't really know how to comfort yourself. That's something you learn as a child. We have mechanisms, as in coping mechanisms, but that's different than really regulating yourself and giving yourself the comfort that you need. And what I mean with comfort is also knowing how to hold yourself whenever something bad has happened, or knowing how to make space for your sadness, your anger, and to just, give yourself a hug and those kind of things. That's what I mean with that. And that's different than a coping mechanism because we think like, oh, I'm just gonna eat something, or I'm going to go outside and do something that just takes my mind off of the situation. Sometimes that is what we need when we are regulating ourselves. But most of the time, a lot of us are just avoiding going deeper into what's happening. Um, Also, here, I would say if you learn how to comfort yourself and if you learn how to regulate yourself whenever you are in this attachment style, you're teaching yourself that you don't need someone else to feel regulated. And for the more like attachment or sorry anxious tendencies, that can really help, that you learn I don't need someone else to just regulate myself. However, with the avoidance style, it can also teach you that you don't have to avoid your feelings because you can comfort yourself and you can regulate yourself. So, those are the two types of perspectives for each of those. And things that you can do, that could be calling someone, it could be grounding yourself by moving your body. I honestly, in a way, when I read that online a lot and I heard a lot of people speaking about, oh, just move your body, I felt some sort of disappointment because I thought, uh, can you not tell me something new? Like, I've heard that so many times, but really moving your body and grounding yourself through sensations, it has helped me so much. And trust me, I'm really someone that, how could I describe it? I really like to challenge myself, and then feeling like I just have to ground myself and I don't know, start dancing or screaming in a pillow. I felt like, that's a that's not really what I'm looking for. However, I've been doing this for the past, I would say, 4 years, 5 years maybe. It has changed my life. If I feel frustrated and angry, I go to my bedroom and I grab a pillow and I just punch as hard as I can and I scream and I get the pillow and I just start slamming it on my bed, and it feels so good afterwards, and it's so healthy because what you're doing, you're just letting the anger or frustration come through, and then very often, sometimes I just start crying afterwards, and sometimes I start laughing like a lunatic. But either way, those things, they do really help. And whenever I feel anxious, I feel like going outside for a walk, it helps, because if you're inside, you're in your living room or in your bedroom and you start to overthink, it can feel like the walls are just coming up to you and you lose perspective. So regulating yourself can be going for a walk, eating something, making a drink. I remember there was a time, I think it was in 2020. Yeah, I moved to Spain and I moved to Barcelona, and I'm not gonna say the Spanish way. But anyways, when I moved there, I went through a period of extreme anxiety, and I'd never had that in my life. I didn't know at the time what was going on. I felt so anxious every day. Every day I was feeling like I was going to have a panic attack. And I thought, what's going on? Why does this not stop? So during that time, I really had to learn to regulate myself, to do things that help me. And what I noticed is that, so first of all, moving my body, going for walks, and not letting the anxiety stop me from whatever I wanted to do is something that helped me so much. I started to drink a lot of chamomile tea. I started taking magnesium. So these things all really helped. And the funny thing is, I was so afraid. I was so afraid that that feeling of anxiety would never leave my life. I really thought, I'm going to be I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to lose my mind. But I didn't. And there was a reason why I felt that way at the time. I wasn't in the right relationship and my body already knew, but I just thought it was so hard to say goodbye to a person that I was with for quite some time and that I loved very much. But the moment I said goodbye, I started to feel better. Of course, there was the heartbreak, of course, but that anxiety, it just went away. So it was my body trying to tell me something, that I was in survival mode. I was trying to make something work that just wasn't for me. But what it taught me was that you can feel the absolute lowest in your life. You can feel so depressed, so anxious, so hopeless, and you will get out of it. You just will. There, it just doesn't last forever. And another example. So last year I went to Tony Robbins and that was amazing. So American. Oh my God. It was really funny though, because it was in Europe and they came on in the show, and Tony Robbins, he had all these dancers and there was all this music and people were jumping and giving high fives and all of those kind of things. And we as Europeans were way more laid back and we didn't feel like that American style really matches our way of behaving. So, anyways, one of those 3 days, what we did is that we spent 1.5 hours going to the very deepest fear of our lives. And that's some, I have so much respect for him because This was an arena with 14,000 people, and he managed to hold the room, hold the container, and to bring everyone back to their deepest fear, their absolute worst feeling in their life. And for a lot of people, what started to happen was that they were screaming, they started to cry, they started to get really anxious, lay on the ground. And I thought for a second, is this responsible to do in such a big crowd? But there were a lot of people that were working there, and each, let's say, 10 each group of 10 people had someone looking out for them. But we went to the worst of the worst of the worst. So I went to my worst fear. For 1.5 hours, he said, okay, make it worse, make it worse. And he kept going and going and deeper and deeper, and it's never going to stop. And you're forever going to feel this way. And until, boom, nothing. I felt nothing. I went from feeling absolutely crap to not feeling anything at all. And I thought, this is my lowest point. And trust me, I'm like, usually I don't really like those kind of exercises because I way more like the bubbly stuff. But I needed to go there because what also happened is that after that moment, he started to bring everyone back up again. And in half an hour, I was feeling so good again. I was feeling so alive and positive, and he knew exactly how to change that. But the moral of this story is that within 2 hours, I went from feeling so bad to feeling so good, and it taught my body it is safe to feel bad sometimes. It is safe to feel scared. It is safe to feel anxious, to feel depressed if you are in a certain time of your life. I don't even like to call something depressed, but just whenever you don't feel good, let's say that, and you can get out of it. And it taught me I don't have to fear my feelings. And you don't have to fear your feelings either. Feeling can be the most terrifying thing to do, but you do not have to be afraid. I've experienced it. That's also why with my clients, I'm never afraid. I'm never afraid to go to the deepest parts. And that's because your body will only take you to places that is safe enough. That's literally how our brains are wired. That's how our bodies are wired. There's nothing that you cannot handle, even though you are afraid. So don't be afraid of feeling and start spending time with feeling all the feelings. Because if you have been able to feel that low, trust me, you can feel so high. You can feel so good and passionate, and that just means you can you can really feel deeply. So don't be afraid of it, and learn how to regulate yourself and to take the small steps. Okay, the last tip before we wrap this up is that build routines to feel safe. So we've spoken about, okay, how can you regulate yourself? What can you do? But it's also very important that if you have a disorganized attachment style, that there are certain things in your life that are consistent. What it does, especially if you're no, actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you identify with. If you have some sort of routine and certainty about your day, or maybe the time you wake up, or the type of breakfast that you're going to have, or I don't know, the time you spend doing something for yourself, or walking the same route to your work, whatever it is, those things are teaching you that you are safe. And that's really going to help you to feel safe in other areas, because you will notice that. Have you ever been in a situation where you weren't sure about your housing? Maybe you had to move into a new place, or maybe you were in a situation where you had to, I don't know, find a new home or find a new job, or you didn't know how to pay your bills. everything starts to become more difficult. So, first, try to find stability in your life wherever you can, and if it's not possible in for example finding a house or anything like that, then find stability in your routines. It will teach your body that it's safe, that that there are elements of stability throughout your life, throughout your day, and it makes it easier for your other emotions and things to just flow through you. So that was a lot. I I think this topic, it's so important because it doesn't only have to do with your romantic relationship. This also shows up in your friendships. It shows up in the way you are at work. It shows up in the relationship with yourself. I really hope that these tips will help you and that you will become more secure if you are one of the other attachment styles or you have that pattern. But also that you will get more understanding. Let's say if you are in a relationship with someone that does have a unsafe attachment style, because in the end, it's just a result of something that happened, and if you are willing to work on it, it can be healed. I've seen it so many times. I'm not worried about that. It could be that, let's say, you've healed your attachment style and something happens that might trigger an old behavior, but then you will have the consciousness to just take a step back and be very intentional with your next action and your next move, and you will see that you will grow so much. So please let me know in the comments which attachment style you recognize yourself in the most. Also, if there are things that helped you, I'm really, really curious to hear what has helped you in healing your attachment style or working out your relationships or whatever it is. If you have any other questions, just let me know. It was great to see you. Thank you so much for spending this, what is it, more than an hour with me. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again. So enjoy your day.